little over a year ago, I made a video extolling the virtues of daily driving a shonky, naturally aspirated 40-year-old diesel car. Following that, I thought I'd better put my money where my mouth was. So here I am to let you know how it's gone, and perhaps more interestingly, what it's cost. Now, if I was Harry Metcalf, I would have a lovely big folder full of receipts all neatly laid out that I could show you, but I'm not, and I don't. What I do have is an app called Custodian, and I'm not paid to promote it, but it is a really good app and it's absolutely free, so it's worth me shouting it out here. And basically what it does is lets you keep your car's history digitally, so any little jobs you do, you can just log them in the app. And you've got a record of them then. Especially because I work on the car myself and use bits of crap that I find lying around the yard to fix it rather than actually taking to a garage and buying parts. So you can log what it costs you on there. I'll put a link in the description below. So let's start with the actual price of the car. £3,500. I traded my old Fiat Abarth 595 against it, but the purchase price of the car was £3,500. First things first, it needed to be insured and taxed. Insurance is about £110, which is quite cheap. It's not on a classic policy, it's on fully comp car policy because I do use it every day. Road tax, £28 a month, but as it's a 1984 car, it'll be exempt this year, hopefully this month. So last year I paid £336 on tax because I do it by direct debit. When I got the car, it was in scruffy but usable condition, and it still is. I've done bits of mechanical work to it over the course of the last year. So it's important to note that I didn't pay a garage to do it, I did it myself. So I can't give you an exact figure for labour rates, but what I will do is probably estimate the amount of hours that I spent doing it, give or take, and say £100 an hour for labour. I think that's probably cheap at the moment, isn't it? But £100 is a nice round number and I'm quite lazy, so it suits me. So the first job was the two lower ball joints. These were making a lot of noise all the time. It's not so much of an issue on the W123. If it had been a W124 or 190, I probably would have ended up with the front wheel detached. They were that bad. Ask me how I know. Thankfully, the W123 design doesn't stress the joint as much, so it can be very forgiving, but I don't recommend it at the same time. Get it changed if you're just making noise. It's not a completely straightforward job changing the ball joints, but it's not terrible either. You do have to remove a large part of the front end, and it requires being careful not to split the upper joints if they're in good condition. You have to hammer the lower ball joints out with a mandrel, that's the genuine method, and press the new ones in. I managed to buy Amazon's finest ball joint press for about £40 and just used a breaker bar on the bench vise to get the new joints in there that way. So the joints themselves cost about £15 for two of them. I'm sure they're fantastic quality as well. The car arrived to me with very empty SLS, that's self-leveling suspension, hydraulic fluid reservoir, and as a result it was very bouncy. What had happened was the steel lines underneath the car had rotted away and let all the fluid out. Some people do just remove the SLS, but I quite like it, so I decided I'd try and fix it. I did initially try to insert a section of copper line into the spot where the steel line had broken. This was a waste of time and copper line, which is 1/4 inch diameter for the SLS system. It's probably actually 6mm, but I ended up buying 50 foot's worth of it. On Amazon, that cost me £50. I was able to borrow a brake flaring tool to make the connections, so no cost there. It's not a difficult job, but just be careful, it's like making brake lines up. I did opt to replace the two nitrogen-filled SLS spheres. When I took the old ones off the car, they actually hadn't failed, which is a miracle, but it was worth replacing them anyway, I think. Nonetheless, a new pair from Autodoc came in at £150. Probably spent another £30 or £40 in Halfords on mineral hydraulic fluid. This is the green citrony coloured stuff. I connected everything up and by some sheer miracle I had SLS. The engine driven pump hadn't suffered too much from being run without oil for God knows how long. At the same time I bought a new pair of anti-roll bar drop links for the rear end, which were £30. And I serviced the car. Filters cost about £20, 6.5 litres of oil costs maybe 40 or 50 quid. We buy it in 20 litre drums. At that time, I also replaced the engine mounts, which were £24. The original sunroof in my car had suffered badly from rot. The previous owner had just taped it up, which didn't really stop the water. I quite like sunroofs, so I thought I'd reinstate it if possible. For this, I bought a second-hand panel from Kansas Mercedes parts in the UK. The cost was about £80 and is a lovely champagne gold piece to contrast with my classic white car. I also got a set of rubber seals and brushes for it, which cost £55 on eBay, and they do fit quite nicely somehow. After that, I just enjoyed the car through summer. In September, it was MOT time, and the only thing the car actually failed on was the front driver's side upper ball joint, which was very sloppy by that stage. I got a pair of new upper ball joints for £20 on eBay. I'm sure they're great quality as well. I only replaced the one that failed because I'm a lazy git. This nice set of Yokohamas cost £374. That did take me up to my first year of driving the W123. It's April now as we film this, and I'm getting ready to do another service. I've also bought 4 new coil springs because I think they're a bit tired, so we'll see how that goes. But the costs for that first year then, so car cost £3,500, tax was £336, insurance was £110, parts totaled £524. An estimate on labour, I'd say the service took about an hour, £100 there. Change and drop links, another half an hour. Garage would probably charge an hour, so another 100 we'll say. Ball joints, I'd say I messed around for about 4 hours on those, say £400. SLS line replacement was a bit more fiddly. I worked at that on and off for a couple of days. Maybe say 8 hours. If you'd taken it to the garage that knew what they were doing, they could have done it probably in about 8 hours, I'd say. Sunroof replacement wasn't too taxing either. I would say £300 there, about 3 hours work. Upper ball joints was fairly painless. I actually managed to do that in about 30 minutes. So say bill for an hour, £100. So if I'd been paying labour on that first year, I would say probably about £1,800 or more in labour. Now that was a lot of jobs that didn't necessarily need doing apart from the ball joints. You know, the SLS, it's not ideal to not have it, but it doesn't really affect the function of the car. The sunroof was just nice to have as well, you know. The car never left me stranded anywhere, which is par for the course really. It's an old diesel. And these weren't faults that developed during my ownership. I inherited them, you know. I suppose the best comparison is that the little Abarth that I traded in for this car, I bought that new in 2015. On PCP that cost me just under £2,000 a year before thinking about tax, insurance or any repairs, and it did need repairs despite being nearly new. So there you have the running costs for a 40-year-old car for a year. I did do quite a few miles in that time. I could probably think about an estimate for a diesel cost. If I can work that out, I'll put it on the screen somewhere. As I say, this year it should qualify for a historic exemption on tax. It was registered on the 1st of January 1984, so it should have been built before that, so it should qualify for the exemption. I do wonder how long they're going to keep that exemption up for, because we're getting into the era now where cars that qualify for it are much more usable, and I think more and more people will be tempted to use them daily. Or I could be wrong. I mean, you know, I think people do have an inherent distrust of old cars when you have to get to work and things, so we'll see. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for whatever financially ill-advised antics we get up to next time. Good luck.